Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer, around your world in 180 seconds. I have your questions lined up on my phone, as always, and we're ready to go. Number one, does the Israeli undercover hospital raid in West Bank destroy any chance of a ceasefire with Hamas? I mean, the fact that you have undercover IDF forces going after people they believe are terrorists in a hospital, I don't see that as more significant in any way than the war that's been going on in Gaza. I mean, the issue is that in the West Bank, but there's been a lot of fighting in the West Bank, not getting a lot of news. No, the big point here is that the Israelis are under more pressure and are willing to accept a more challenging ceasefire deal than they were a couple weeks ago, both in terms of how long that ceasefire would go on, and also what they're negotiating for, the number of hostages and what they have to give up in return. It looks like they are getting pretty close, but once again would have to be approved by the Knesset, and Hamas has to say yes, and that has been more challenging than getting the Israelis to the table, at least in the last couple weeks. Why is it more concerning when TikTok shares U.S. data than when U.S. tech companies do? Well, I mean, one is the presumption, and I think it's a reasonable presumption, that if TikTok has your data, the Chinese government will have access to that data. And a lot of Americans are understandably uncomfortable with a foreign government that engages in espionage against the U.S. having access to citizens' data, as opposed to, say, the U.S. government, which, of course, occasionally does so as well. But you are a citizen, you do have those rights, and in principle, you're more aligned with it. But, also the fact that the Chinese government does not allow Western social media firms, the Metas and the Google's surveillance capitalism, to operate fully in China. And that means that the Chinese are not having access to American major companies, some of the biggest and biggest drivers of wealth that the United States has. So why would the Americans allow the Chinese to do that in the U.S.? At the very least, you'd want a level playing field, and that means for both sides. Finally, what are the wider consequences of West Africa's Brexit moment? Well, what we're talking about here is that the West African EU, which is nothing like the EU, ECOWAS, and it's kind of like an economic and political bloc, but it's not super functional, and it's really, really divided. But nonetheless, the three countries in Africa that have recently had military coups and therefore have zero legitimacy of their governments, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, have all decided to leave ECOWAS. And, who's on the ground in those countries, who has any influence other than the military? It's Russia. And given that Russia's other friends are North Korea and Iran, that is generally speaking not a great thing for West Africa and more broadly. Anyway, that's it for me, and I hope everyone's doing well. I'll talk to you all real soon.